Also on Monday, the day that the Leafs play the Montreal Canadiens, was the NHL trade deadline.
Oh.
And a day before the deadline, the Leafs made, you could call it, I guess, their big acquisition of the season. And that was acquiring Columbus Blue Jackets captain Nick Foligno.
That is right.
For a first-round pick and 2 fourth-round picks. And there's a lot of salary retention going on. So they sent a fourth rounder to Columbus with that first and another fourth rounder to the San Jose Sharks. So Lepore, I need your take on this Foligno acquisition. Do you think the Leafs paid too much? And also, what are you expecting from Nick Foligno and how he's going to fit in with this team?
With regard to, well, first of all, I'm happy about the deal. I mean, anytime we can get a Paisan on the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's a great thing. Another captain. You look back, you look at the Leafs roster. I mean, Tavares he's the captain of the Leafs. He was captain of the Islanders. Thornton was captain in San Jose. Foligno had the C. So it shows like they're zooming in on character guys. Spezza, was captain the Sens for a brief time. The deal itself, and as to whether we paid too much, we did pay a lot. A first and 2 fourths for a guy who doesn't necessarily put up a lot of points is a lot. But I've always, how do I put this? I've never really thought it's fair to compare deals because different teams have different needs, both in the way of their lineup and what they need from the guy they're picking up. So, I mean, everyone was quick to point to Taylor Hall and what was given up for him to acquire him and say, well, we gave up more for Foligno than was given up for Taylor Hall from Boston. And, the metrics and numbers show, Taylor Hall is a better player. But to that, I respond, the Toronto Maple Leafs don't need Taylor Hall. They should have zero interest in acquiring Taylor Hall. And a player like Nick Foligno is very useful. So with that value, I totally get it. He is the type of player that I expected the Leafs to get. Not a big name, but a name we all know, something we can expect. A guy we know what we're going to get from him. And I had heard from people inside the Toronto Maple Leafs that, to put it how they put it, Sheldon Keefe doesn't give a flying fuck about scoring from the third and fourth line. He just wants them to not get scored on. So even Spezza earlier in the year, when he was putting up all those numbers, it's great and fine. But as far as Keefe's concerned, as long as he's not getting scored on, he's playing well. And I think we can all make the assumption that he knows he's going to get his scoring from his top 2 lines. So
and that makes a lot of sense.
Of course it does. Like yeah. So if he's going to break even with the third and fourth line, he'll take that every time. And if you look at the underlying numbers of Foligno, he never gets scored on. Like all the geeks were coming out right after that trade and saying, well, one thing that's obvious about Nick Foligno is that he never gets scored on. So when this deal was made, I mean, you have people making their assumptions about where he's going to end up in the lineup. And there were a lot of people who were quick to say that he's going to end up in the top 6, either with Matthews and Marner or Nylander and Tavares. But I don't think he's going to be there. To be honest, I think it's going to be Hyman, and whether it's Gauch or someone else. And I think Foligno is going to be on that third line. And again, I might be wrong. I'm just making my assumption on what the geeks are saying in the way that this guy never gets scored on, and connecting that to what I've heard Sheldon Keefe wants from his third and fourth line. So again, if you look at the deal, like when I look at deals, I try not to look at specifically the player that was acquired or what was given up. I try to look at what was done to the team. So you can look and see that the Toronto Maple Leafs acquired Nick Foligno. That's not the same as another team acquiring Nick Foligno. So on the broad scope of this, the Toronto Maple Leafs acquired, to me, and I'm trying to get in their head here, but this is what I think they were looking at, a third line player who fits their model of we will not get scored on. When that third line's on, we will not get scored on. And that essentially makes the team a lot better. And again, the numbers they use, the metrics in acquiring him and who they'll put him with and those guys, I mean, who the fuck knows in Leafland, what they got going on in those offices. But that's how I see the deal, that this deal makes the Leafs a lot stronger because it allows those top 2 lines to play and it makes their depth exactly what they want. Not showing off, not falling behind, to make a Seinfeld reference, but just not getting scored on.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, man. I think the big thing with Nick Foligno is versatility. And I do agree with you. A lot of people are saying he's going to slot in on the wing with Tavares and Nylander on the second line, or maybe they're going to put him with Matthews and Marner. I don't really see that happening either. Now, can Foligno play in the top six on the wing? Of course he can. He's a very versatile player. He's very responsible defensively. He brings the grit. I know Leaf
Yeah.
fans love to hear the word grit and physicality, especially come playoff time. So he's going to bring all that stuff. He's a very well-rounded player. But Lepore, I agree with you. I think he is going to slot in probably as the third line center on this team.
Really? You think it's okay?
I mean, he could play like I said, he can play the wing, he can play center. But I do agree with you that I can see him on the third line because I think Hyman's a better offensive player than Nick Foligno at this point.
I don't even think that's a discussion.
I think Alex Galchenyuk is a better offensive player than Nick Foligno at this point. So if you think that Hyman is going to, stick with Matthews and Marner for the stretch run and into the playoffs, and Galchenyuk is going to be on that second line with Tavares and Nylander, then it does make a lot of sense that Foligno is going to slot into the bottom six, especially considering how good he is as a defensive forward. Now, in terms of the overpaying and all that, yes, I do think the Leafs overpaid a bit, but like you said, Lepore, they're in a situation right now. Like this isn't like, I don't know, some middle of the road. This isn't like the Chicago Blackhawks acquiring Nick Foligno for, a first round pick and two other picks. This is a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations this season. And this is a team that identified exactly what they needed. They wanted everything we just mentioned about Nick Foligno. And I think they identified him as the perfect target to be that versatile player that they needed. And I think they understood that, sure, they're overpaying. They're giving up a first round pick. But this is something that Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe, and even Dubas, he alluded to this in his press conference on deadline day. He's saying, this is going back to conversations that me and Keefe have had, even going back before the season started. That we wanted a player like this that can play up and down the lineup, that can be responsible, that can do all these things. He's a captain as well, former captain, I should say. So when you look at it from that perspective, I think it does make a lot of sense. When I do get a little frustrated, though, when I see the abomination that is the Buffalo Sabres and how they traded Taylor Hall for a second-round pick and Anders Bjork. And now Taylor Hall in his first two games with the Bruins has 2 goals.
Yeah.
So there's people on Twitter telling me, because I ripped that move by Buffalo, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. I know Taylor Hall has 2 goals this season, but that is the worst organization in hockey. It's been a complete shit show. They had a COVID outbreak. This is not a 2-goal scorer, okay? And now, is he the Taylor Hall who won the Hart Trophy a few seasons ago with New Jersey? No, I don't necessarily think he's that player still, but the guy was shooting 2.3% and had 2 goals in 37 games, and now has 2 goals in 3 games with Boston. So
yeah, he was miserable.
When you see a player of that talent level get traded for essentially nothing, it makes you look at the Foligno deal and say, oh, okay. I mean, we overpaid a little bit, but again, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. It's a late first round pick. The Leafs are in a situation where it made sense.
So you just think the Hall deal is kind of like an anomaly in the way that the Sabres are a bunch of idiots and it can't get compared to anyone?
Yeah, pretty much. And I know the Sabres are coming out and saying, well, he had a full no move clause and he controlled where he wanted to go and blah, blah, blah. It's like, shut up. You could have got a first round pick for Taylor Hall. Don't give me this bullshit.
Would you? And again, it doesn't fit what the Leafs needed, but what we traded for Foligno, had we traded that for Taylor Hall, would you have been A-okay with that?
I would have been fine. I would have been really happy if they traded a first round pick and 2 fourths for Taylor Hall.
Yeah, I guess something would have had to come out of our lineup.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And there is gonna be a lot of lineup juggling here. Like I even saw like TSN like sending out like Instagram posts saying, be like, pick between these 4 players. Like, who do you think isn't gonna make the lineup once everyone is ready to go come playoff time? And they mentioned like Thornton, Galchenyuk, and Engvall. But so yeah, the Leafs are gonna have to make decisions. And yeah, would I have loved to see Taylor Hall in the top 6 at another fast scoring winger? Yeah, that would have been great. But But again, when you look at the context of this team, you have the big four up front, solidifying that bottom six with a guy who can play in the top six if he needs to. It's a good situation all around, Lepore.
Again, like how we say, what the deal means in totality. So now, who is that sixth guy? I think that's an interesting discussion. So is it Galch? Is it like, are we done here? I mean, we're done here with regard to what we can add to the team. So this is what it is. Is Galch the guy and we're done and that's the top six?
So you're saying like, who's the final guy in the top six?
Yeah.
If you're going to include Hyman as the fifth guy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think at this point, and even Dubas, like he's come out and said it. And again, he had, every GM on trade deadline day has their press conference after the 3 p.m. Eastern deadline.
Yeah.
And Dubas was saying like the play of Galchenyuk has changed our decision-making process, because I think the Leafs probably would have been more aggressive in acquiring a top six forward if Galchenyuk hadn't been playing the way he's been playing. Now, is Galchenyuk out there playing like Austin Matthews? No, but he's providing a spark in the top six, and he's giving them, that skill level that they need to play on the wing with, either of those pairs. So I think Galchenyuk he's been really solid so far, Lepore. I've been happy with his play. So I think, at this point, I think it's set in stone. But again, if Foligno, ends up playing in the top six on the wing, I don't think either of us would be surprised, right?
I wonder if they're going to kind of have like a merry-go-round situation of like what they need against that opponent or in that game.
That's
or that
a really good point.
Or that time of the game. Like you put Simmons with them for a while, or I don't know, like we saw Thornton bounce around the top six. You throw Robertson in there for some speed. You keep Galch. Like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they do.
100%. Lepore, that's a really good point, because something that I always felt held the Leafs back was Babcock and his in-game decision-making, and even like his game-to-game decision-making in terms of the lineup. Like there was things I remember, like in some of those Boston series, like Kapanen was like flying around. He scored that amazing shorthanded goal where he Brad Marchand to the puck. And
my head hit the ceiling when that goal.
It was unbelievable. Then you look at his ice time at the end of the game, which the Leafs ended up, I think that was the game 7. Anyway, you look at Kapanen's ice time. He played like 8 minutes and 42 seconds.
Awesome.
Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that wasn't the only game that he was, buzzing around playing well. Whereas I think Keefe, when it comes to making like in-game decisions and looking at the matchups, I think a guy like Foligno is going to give him, more options, right? And give him that ability to be creative. And you see it with Keefe. Like, he's not afraid to try things out.
What game was it? Was it last week? There was a spell where he had Matthews, Marner, Tavares. He was like, fuck this. And he put the three of them out there when it's amazing when all three are on at the same time. And you look at the expected goals, all those stats, when those three guys are on the ice, it's like 90-something% because, well, they always have the puck. If all three of them are at the same time, the puck's always in the other team's end. So maybe he's even thinking that. It gives him that option. Like, I want to do that. And then my second line can be like a Hyman, Nylander, Foligno, or whatever, and then Galch moves down, and then change it throughout the game. Like, we'll see. And again, that's something added to the deal and how the deals are different for different teams. Whereas if it gave them that, because you have this guy who's good defensively, who's versatile, well, now it gave my coach a lot of options depending on the circumstances in the game, and that's something that's really important in the playoffs. So,
oh yeah, 100%. And if the Leafs are down by a goal or 2 goals, like, he's not afraid to just put all the big boys out there and stack a line, and he's not afraid to mix things up, whenever he feels like it. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Keefe is going to have a ton of options here, and it'll be interesting to see how they utilize all these forwards moving forward.